I think that assessment of students is always important, whether it be during the workshop time during the summer or throughout the year. It's always important to try to gauge what the student is learning and to see what deficiencies he or she might have if there, are any, and there always will be some.
In debate, we teach kids a lot, and one of the only ways that we really know how to gauge whether or not they're getting it is their performance in debate tournaments. And unfortunately, that's not necessarily the best gauge, especially because kids have a lot of anxiety. And so you might want to do a little activity to make sure they're kind of getting it, they're getting the general feel. And so debate review games are a way to make debate feel not too much like school, which they already get enough of. So it's just a way to kind of make it fun and exciting, but to assess whether or not they're understanding and absorbing the material. We use Jeopardy, which is maybe a little cliche, but it's really, really effective. The format of the game kind of does most of the work for you. There are different categories, so the kids don't really feel put on the spot. They can kind of pick things that they know. There's a different gradation, so you can determine what are hard questions from easy questions. You split the class up into groups so that it's a kind of competitive activity and they want to get the right answers. And you can decide the team so that, if you feel like there are some kids who are getting it a little bit more, you can kind of place them in with some kids that don't really get it to kind of balance the class out. So Jeopardy works really well, and it has a lot of built-in incentives.
If they're just starting, we have like categories such as what are, the certain speeches, what are the times, what are the sides of the debate, what are the specific arguments like a disadvantage, a counterplan, a critique, and we have those as categories, and students can just pick them, and then, it's a fun way to answer things.
I think a good way to do it so that they don't really understand that it's assessment and it doesn't look like I'm measuring what you know. It's just, if at the end of the day you've given a lecture, then you just kind of do a little role playing. So I'll say, all right, so now I'm the debater and I really don't understand this argument. Could you guys, as a group, help me to understand it? And then that's when they tell you as much as they know. And in that process, you can gauge whether they really understood what, you taught them in the morning, or you can identify what you need to work on a bit more. And for them, it's fun. It's like, oh, I can be the teacher for a while.
Another game we've tried is a version of a popular show called Cash Cab. You kind of set the classroom up like a car. You allow some students to get in. You, the teacher, are the driver, and you're driving them around town, and you kind of ask them questions. They have to get the questions right in order to kind of advance in the game and continue along. If they get 3 strikes, they have to get out of the cab, and you let 4 other students get in. So that's a way to kind of make the game more fun and new, something that they know about that's kind of a pop culture reference, but also is a good format for getting them to understand certain material.
It's really all up to the coach's imagination and what they're willing to bring to the table and how much work they're willing to put into that review. But those reviews are vital for students, just as they would review any activity in a normal class.
You develop questions like, what are the speeches? What does 1AC stand for? What does 1NC stand for? How many minutes in high school is the first affirmative constructive? How many minutes is the first negative constructive? How many minutes is the first affirmative rebuttal, et cetera, et cetera? What sides do people normally take in a debate? Like, are they affirmative? Are they negative? What's the resolution? Those kinds of questions.
Think about the things that the kids say, things they've asked questions about that you've already answered in questions, kind of things that you've noticed from debates. You can also fill in the material with things that are not exactly debate related, so things that are maybe entertainment or sports related or just educational, so that if maybe they don't have enough debate knowledge, they can still feel like they're being kind of challenged and it's really competitive, and so that way it makes it a little bit easier, more palatable for them.
I feel like if you don't have any enthusiasm, then the game's not going to be successful and the kids aren't going to be willing to learn. Students always like the teachers that go out there and ask them questions and be like, well, what's your opinion on this? And they throw out, subtle jokes here and there. They don't like the teacher just stands up and just lectures.
You definitely don't want to review before the kids have learned too much. Then it makes the game a little stale after a while. Maybe there's a little bit too much filler material. After every week of instruction, you could probably do a game like this to kind of assess whether or not the kids are learning enough at the time, and that's probably enough time for you to get a lot of questions. One thing I would say is that you should always save your questions after every game. Maybe make a document on a computer so you can recycle old questions that are always relevant. And it's important to have old questions on in later versions of the games just to make sure that the kids are not learning something for the first time and then forgetting it later.